Hello everybody and welcome back to Storytime with Soul Guru. Today we'll be continuing our epic journey through the sands of destiny with Chapter 3, The Chamber of Enlightenment by Keith Waller. The group stepped cautiously into the alcove, the faint glowing symbols casting an ethereal light that illuminated their faces with a soft overworldly glow. The air was thick with anticipation, each of them acutely aware that the trials they had faced so far were merely preludes to the challenge that lay ahead. As they ventured deeper, the passage narrowed until they reached a massive stone door, adorned with intricate carvings of celestial bodies and ancient glyphs. Professor Winter ran her fingers over the carvings, her brow furrowed in concentration. "These symbols," she murmured, "speak of the gods' favour and the pursuit of wisdom. This must be the entrance to the Chamber of Enlightenment." Ethan examined the door closely, noticing a series of depressions that appeared to be keyholes of some sort. "It looks like we need to solve another puzzle to gain entrance," he observed, pulling out the map and studying it under the dim light. As the others gathered around, Ethan pointed to a series of markings on the map that corresponded with the symbols on the door. "The riddle mentions a test of knowledge and wisdom. If we can decipher the meaning of these symbols, it might reveal the combination we need." Leela leaned in, her eyes scanning the ancient glyphs. "These markings here seem to represent different aspects of the human experience. Courage, truth, sacrifice and wisdom," she said thoughtfully. "Maybe the order in which we activate these symbols corresponds to the order in which virtues must be demonstrated." Sammy, still shaken from the ordeal in the Chamber of Shadows, hesitated before speaking. "So if we get it wrong, what happens?" he asked, his voice laced with apprehension. Professor Winter's gaze met his, her expression serious. "The pharaohs were known for their elaborate traps and tests. If we choose incorrectly, the chamber could unleash a number of dangers. We must tread carefully." Ethan took a deep breath, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "We can do this," he said, his voice steady. "Let's work through it logically." Together they carefully analysed the symbols, cross-referencing them with the clues on the map. The process was grueling, each of them cycling through potential solutions, but no one seemed quite right. As the hours passed, the tensions between them grew thick, and every misstep seemed to tighten the noose of anxiety around their heads. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Leela made a breakthrough. Her eyes lit up as she studied the carvings with a newfound understanding. "The symbols represent more than just virtues," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "They also correspond to celestial bodies, each linked to a different god. The order in which they align in the night sky must be the key." Ethan nodded, his pulse quickened. "So, we need to match the sequence of keyholes to the position of the celestial bodies. But what is the order?" Leela hesitated for a moment, then reached out to touch the first symbol, a star representing wisdom. "The ancients revered wisdom above all. It must come first." She pressed the corresponding keyhole, and a soft click echoed through the chamber. "Next is truth," Ethan said, following her lead. "Truth guides wisdom and gives it purpose." He pressed the second keyhole. His hand trembled slightly. "Courage should come next," Professor Winter added, her voice steady despite the tension. "It takes courage to pursue truth and wisdom." The third keyhole clicked into place. They all paused, their eyes moving to the final symbol, sacrifice. Sammy's face drained of colour. But if we press this, what if it means one of us has to?" The word hung in the air, unspoken yet clear. The ancient Egyptians were known for their brutal and unforgiving traps. A misstep here could mean more than failure, it could mean death. Ethan looked at each of them, his mind racing. "We have to take the risk. We've come too far to turn back now." With a deep breath, he pressed the final keyhole. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then, with a low rumble, The stone door began to slide open, revealing a vast chamber, bathed in a soft golden light. They stepped inside, their eyes wide with awe. The Chamber of Enlightenment was unlike anything they had seen before. The walls were lined with towering shelves filled with ancient scrolls and tablets, the surface covered in the wisdom of ages long past. At the centre of the chamber stood a large circular platform, its surface inscribed with more symbols and surrounded by a ring of light. But the sense of wonder was quickly overshadowed by a new realization. The chamber was not entirely safe. In the centre of the platform lay a single glittering dagger, its blade inscribed with hieroglyphs. Ethan stepped onto the platform, his heart racing. "This must be the final test," he said, his voice filled with a mixture of fear and excitement. The riddle spoke of knowledge and wisdom. Perhaps we have to prove our understanding to proceed. As they gathered around the platform, a voice deep, resonant, and ancient echoed through the chamber. It spoke in a language none of them understood, yet the meaning was clear, as if the words were being translated directly into their minds.
"To claim the treasure of the Pharaoh, you must first prove your wisdom. Answer the question posed, and a path will be revealed."
Ethan exchanged a glance with Professor Winter, who nodded in encouragement. "We're ready," he said, his voice steady despite the flutters of nerves in his stomach. The first question appeared in the air above the platform, written in glowing hieroglyphs. The words shifted and transformed into English before their eyes.
"What is the most powerful treasure one can possess?"
He stared at the question, pondering its meaning. Sammy was the first to speak, his voice tentative. "Is it wealth? Gold?" Leela shook her head. "No, that's too obvious. The Egyptians valued many things. Life, the afterlife, knowledge." Ethan's eyes lit up as realization struck him. "It's knowledge. The most valuable treasure is knowledge." He reached out and touched the glowing words, confident in his answer. The chamber rumbled softly in approval, and the question faded away, replaced by another.
"What is the key to immortality?"
Professor Winter smiled, her mind racing back to her studies. The Egyptians believed that immortality could be achieved through being remembered, through the preservation of one's name and deeds. The key to immortality is legacy. Ethan nodded, repeating her words as he touched them. Once more, the chamber responded with another rumble, signalling that they were correct. The final question appeared, more complex and daunting than the others.
"What unites the living and the dead?"
They stood in silence, each lost in thought. The answer seemed elusive, as if it were hidden in the very walls around them. Finally, Maya spoke, her voice quiet but filled with conviction. "Memory," she said softly. "The memories of the living keep the dead alive. They connect us, bridging the gap between life and death." Ethan, trusting her intuition, once again touched the words and repeated her answer. As soon as he did, the chamber filled with a blinding light. They shielded their eyes, the brilliance overwhelming their senses. When the light finally dimmed, they found themselves standing before a new passageway, one that had not been visible before. But as they prepared to step forward, the ancient voice returned, colder and more ominous than before.
"Knowledge, legacy, and memory. To pass, one must be sacrificed, so that the others may carry the virtues forward."
A cold chill swept through the ground. They had known the risks, but hearing the demand spoken aloud was like a death sentence. "No," Sammy whispered, his eyes wide with terror. "There has to be another way." Professor Winter stepped forward, her face pale but resolute. The ancient text spoke of this. The sacrifice doesn't mean a life. It's symbolic. It's about giving up something precious, something irreplaceable. Leela glanced around the room. Panic began to set in. But what? What could we possibly give up? Ethan's eye drifted towards the dagger on the platform. A cold realization crept over him. The room seemed to hold its breath. The oppressive silence weighed on his chest. As the truth dawned, he understood what needed to be done, but the thought was almost unbearable. "It's not just symbolic," he said quietly, picking up the dagger, his voice trembling slightly as he continued. "The pharaohs believed in blood sacrifices as a way to honor the gods and secure their favor. One of us has to make the ultimate sacrifice." As his words hung in the air, a strange stillness descended upon them and on the chamber. The time itself seemed to halt. Professor Winter, Sammy, Tommy and Maya all stood froze in place, their expressions locked in a mix of fear and dread. The only movement in the room came from Ethan, who could feel his heart hammering in his chest, and Leela, whose eyes were wide with the same unsettling awareness. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as he realized what had happened. It was as if the chamber had singled them out, creating a moment outside of time for the two of them alone, a final chance to decide their fate. Leela's gaze met his, filled with both fear and a sorrowful understanding. Slowly she stepped forward, her movement deliberate in the stillness that surrounded them. "I'll do it," she said, her voice clear but tingled with an uncertainty of sadness. "I have no family. No one's waiting for me back home. My life, it's been about this journey, this discovery. If this is what it takes to complete it, then I'm willing." Ethan's heart ached at her words, the very thought of losing her almost unbearable. The dagger felt heavy in his hand, a tangible representation of the impossible choice before them. "No, Leela," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "We'll find another way." "There is no other way," she insisted, her hand reaching out to close over his on the dagger. Her touch was warm against his skin, grounding him in the reality of the moment. "We all knew the risks coming here. This is my choice." Ethan's mind raced, every fibre of his being screaming at him to protect her, to find some way out of this terrible situation. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw the resolve there, the acceptance of what needed to be done. The love that had always simmered beneath the surface between them now burned brightly, intensified by the knowledge that this might be their final moment together. "Leela, I can't lose you," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. Her eyes softened and she leaned in closer, their foreheads nearly touching. "You won't lose me, Ethan. Not really. I'll always be with you, in every discovery, in every step you take from here on. This is my gift to you, to all of us." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes as he realized the truth in her words. The chamber had demanded a sacrifice, and Leela had made her decision, but the thought of letting her go was tearing him apart. He tightened his grip on the dagger, feeling the weight of it, as if it were the weight of the world pressing down on him. For a moment their gaze held, their unspoken emotion between them finally surfaced. In that moment, their bond they had formed during their journey took on a new, painful intensity. "I'm not letting you do this," Ethan whispered fiercely as he gripped tight on the dagger. Their gaze locked, and in their charged moment, the years of unspoken feelings, burdened emotions, and suppressed desires between them surged to the surface, demanding to be acknowledged. Without another thought, she grabbed him by the collar, pulled him into a kiss that was as fierce as it was desperate. This wasn't just a kiss, it was an explosion of all the longing, the pain, the love that had built up between them through the years. Their mouths moved against each other with a ferocity that spoke of the countless nights spent yearning for something more, of the fear that this moment might be their last chance to feel anything at all. Ethan's hand found her waist, pulling her against him as if trying to fuse their bodies together, to hold on to her in a way that went beyond a mere touch. They were lost in each other, their kisses growing more fevered, more urgent, as if they could somehow make up for all the time they had wasted, all the moments they had let slip by unfulfilled. Leah's fingers tangled in Ethan's hair, her breath hot against his lips, as she pressed herself closer, needing to feel every inch of him, to lose herself in the raw, overpowering connection they had finally allowed to erupt between them. When she finally pulled back, they were both breathless, their hearts pounding as if they had run a marathon. There were tears in Leela's eyes, but her expression was resolute. The intensity of what they had just shared only seemed to solidify her decision. "You have to let me go," she said softly, her voice breaking with the weight of the moment. "It's the only way." Ethan shook his head, his hand still gripping her tightly, unwilling to release her. "No, Leela. We can find another way. I can't lose you." But Leela's resolve had hardened, even as her heart broke. "You'll always be the stronger one, Ethan. But this is my choice." Her voice trembled, but there was a fierce determination in her eyes. "I have to do this, for us." Before Ethan could react, Leela raised the dagger. With trembling hands, Ethan just froze in place. He was trying to stop her, but was paralyzed from doing so. His hand still on the daggers, being guided by Leela's hand. There was nothing he could do but look at Leela's eyes, reflecting the grim resolve that had taken hold of her. The blade hovered inches from her chest as the finality of her decision pressed down on her. Time seemed to stretch every second, dragging out as the weight of what she was about to do sank in. But just as she steeled herself for the fatal blow, something deep within her mind hesitated. A flicker of doubt, an instinct whispered that there might be another way. Leah's gaze shifted to the ancient symbols on the platform, the hieroglyphs speaking of sacrifice and blood, but nowhere did they demand a life be taken. Her breath caught, and in that instant a realization dawned on her. She didn't need to die to satisfy the Chamber's demand. The sacrifice could be symbolic, an offering of blood rather than of life. Slowly she redirected the dagger, her heart still pounding, but now with a different kind of urgency. With deliberation, control, precision, she drew the blade across her palm, wincing as a sharp metal sliced through her skin. Blood welled up and spilled onto the platform, the red liquid dripping onto the ancient stone. The chamber responded with a deep, resonant tremble, as if recognizing the offering she had made. The voice returned, this time filled with an ancient, almost mournful reverence.
"The sacrifice has been made. The path is now open."
As soon as the words were spoken, the stillness lifted. Time resumed its course, and the others blinked as if suddenly freed from an invisible hold. But Ethan and Leela remained close, their hands still entwined around the dagger, the moments they had shared etched in their souls. Leela suddenly staggered. Ethan caught her, pulling her against his chest. The desperation in his touch mirrored the ache in his heart. Why did you do that?" he whispered, his voice breaking. Leah leaned her forehead against his, tears slipping down her cheek. "Because I love you, Ethan, and because I believe in us, even if this is the price we had to pay." Their closeness now was almost unbearable, the raw emotion between them palatable, as if it could tear them apart and hold them together all at once. Ethan pressed his lips to hers again, this time with a tenderness that contrasted with the earlier intensity, a kiss that spoke of love, too deep to put into words, of a connection that transcended the physical, the emotional and the spiritual. Suddenly from the shadows they heard Tommy's voice shouting, "Shame, shame, I know your name." Leela and Ethan suddenly both realised that everyone else must have unfrozen and were watching the scene unfold right in front of them. When they finally pulled apart, there was a silent understanding between them, They had both given everything they had, and in doing so, they had found something that would endure even in the face of danger, even in the face of death. And as long as there were secrets left to uncover, they would face them together, their bond unbreakable, and their passion for each other burning brighter than ever before. Well guys, this brings us to the end of Chapter 3. Join us next time in the Sands of Destiny, Chapter 4, Reflections of the Past.